So while Chrono Cross was developed in 1.5 years, the English translation was done in 3 months, with 2 more months for debugging. Richard Honeywood, who is a senior member of the Square localization team back in the day, explained in an interview that the North American version actually had additional dialogue that clarified background information and covered plot holes found in the original Japanese script. The game also had subtle and minor AI scripting tweaks made in the North American version. For example, Bunny Yip uses Volcano now, enabling you to trap the ability earlier. Otherwise, that's all there is to comment on the regional differences outside of some obscure bugs. Chrono Cross on PlayStation 1 switches resolutions between the gameplay, which is 240p, and menus, which are 480i, and has seriously varying frame rate targets ranging from 10, 15, 20, 30, and up to 60, depending on what's going on. FMVs are 50, field and battle are generally 30, and menus and transitions are generally 60. Stable isn't the right word to describe the game's performance, but it does hard target a frame rate, and if it can't hit it, it will immediately drop to whatever FPS it can handle. Dithering is used to convey the illusion of more colors despite the compression necessary for the hardware, but overall the game holds up visually if viewed on a CRT or perhaps through the right shader on a modern display. The most significant glitch in Chrono Cross, found in every version of the PS1 version, including Japanese and English, which I know because I tested him, that'd be relevant to the casual player, involves Pip. Pip is unique in that he can evolve mid-battle depending on the elements used throughout battles. Pip's form outside of the appearance is stored in RAM, but it is not stored in your save file, so if you turn the console off, you'll be left with base Pip's element grid growth, which stops growing after star level 27, and base Pip stat growth. There's a few clunky solutions to this. Number 1, never turn the console off after evolving Pip. Number 2, keep a save before Pip evolves, load it, and evolve him so that the RAM state knows he's evolved, then load your normal save. Or 3, download a fan patch. Otherwise, Chrono Cross just has some minor bugs. There is a quirk in the battle system where if you mash really fast, you can skip when enemies are going to interrupt your queue of attacks. You can also rig the roulette in the casino by pausing the game, and there's a late game accessory for Viper that you can pick up repeatedly and then sell off to make as much money as you want. I believe that's as notable as it gets. Now, if you've got a Vita, PSP, or PS2 with fast disk read, you'll have about 1 second faster of load times. The one caveat to this is that the credits FMV visually screws up at the end of the game. Your other option, of course, is fan emulation, where the major appeal may either be 60 FPS or AI upscaled backgrounds. The game emulates just fine in its vanilla state, but if you want 60 FPS, you have to overclock the CPU in the settings of either DuckStation or the Beetle HW core in RetroArch. There's a number of caveats with overclocking, and I'm not sure if that experience is optimized or polished enough for me to totally recommend. Beetle HW has frame buffer issues, and both emulators have odd anomalies appear, can softlock during FMVs, have UI elements like the cursor go missing, or certain menus take inputs too fast. If you desire AI upscaling though, you should look into Project Kid. Project Kid utilizes a custom Beetle HW core, and I do recommend it in its current state, even if it does require a sizable download and a little bit of work to set up. It's a stable and visually appealing way to play the original game that does compete with Square's official efforts. And the next game we have to talk about real quick is Radical Dreamers for the Satellaview. The English ROM hack for Radical Dreamers was put together by Demiforce and several others, and you can be sure that programming this was no easy feat. The saving feature remains intact, you don't need to name your character anymore, there's a fast text option when starting now, and the Satellaview's lengthy opening is skipped. There's also translation patches for Chinese, French, German, and Spanish. Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers Edition producer Koichiro Sakamoto shared in an interview that yes, data from the original game was lost and had to be reverse engineered. Additionally, the original game's producer, Hiromichi Tanaka, explained that the data was once backed up but lost over time. Moreover, Chrono Cross did not have a PC version to fall back on. So, rather than porting the game into Unity like Final Fantasy IX or various other Square remasters, this remaster is actually working off of emulation and and had development assistance from D4, who have worked on a few emulators for the Wii. The game even still uses MCR files for saving, which saved me a lot of time making this video. The emulation is relevant, as we'll see several emulation quirks as we go along, so keep it in mind. The script was lightly revised with minor changes and consistency checks regarding names and terms. Moreover, the Japanese version received the same revisions, along with updates for info added to the original English version. Also, there is a little bit of a secret ending if you finish both Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross. It's spoilers though, so be careful googling it. Chrono Cross has a heavy emphasis on accents. For the remaster, the only accent that had been notably touched was Mojo. His accent was toned down substantially. However, his generic lines still featured the accent as it was. Some other uses of accents were toned down lightly across the board as well, I imagine just for clarity's sake. The remaster uses the Japanese version as a base, but this doesn't mean much given the changes made anyway, such as the updated script and bug fixes we'll look at in a bit. People have noticed the AI programming differences though, so some English guides made for the original may not match exactly in a few parts, like Bunny Yip no longer uses Volcano. The name limit when naming characters was expanded, there's faster load and save times, there's autosaves on the overworld map, you can skip through dialogue faster, and there's achievements. By the way, this video is as recent as version 1.0.1, aka the game after its day 1 patch, and as of April 25th, 2022, most achievements on the Xbox version are reportedly bugged and not triggering when they're supposed to. Check the pinned comments to see if it's been fixed yet. There are now optional toggles to disable encounters, toggle automated battles, and toggle a boost in battle where your elements are always available and enemies miss far more often. Additionally, the previously exclusive New Game Plus item that lets you fast forward or slow down gameplay is now given to you on your first playthrough and doesn't require you to hold down the button anymore, nor will it give you issues with loading into battle while moving so fast like the original would. Be aware though, it's pretty easy to bump or accidentally toggle these options on, so keep an eye out for those icons. Chrono Cross Remaster features 2 graphics modes, New and Classic. The new graphic style has revamped models and textures for in combat and in the field, AI upscaled backgrounds, new character portraits, and a cleaner font. The AI upscaled backgrounds had manual touch-ups done to them as well. The results of the backgrounds are lacking but serviceable. Their goal was to mask the compression and dithering of them, and it's a step in the right direction compared to, say, Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy IX. Though I believe Square has done better with AI upscaling and manual touch-ups in their other recent games like Legend of Mana or Saga Frontier, so I was expecting more. Moreover, we can compare Square's results to Tyrion's upscaling, which you can play with now. Z-Pilot, who you may know from the Magiri mod for Final Fantasy IX, also shared some samples of their upscaling results on Twitter. AI upscaling and AI upscaling implementation are massive tasks in themselves though. If there are any finished AI upscale projects to speak of, I'll share them, but for now, these are simply prospects and Square's results are the most the remaster has to offer. The classic graphic style retains the original game's backgrounds and models and textures all one for those that want the original backgrounds and models, but the font isn't the same at all. There's a fundamental issue here I won't get too into, but these models aren't meant to be upscaled like this, and it shows in the mismatch of resolution with the background, along with the seams of polygons being visible. Basically, I'd prefer it if the classic mode looked like how my footage of the PS1 version looks, though that may just be me. While the opening FMV was AI upscaled and cleaned up, the rest of the game's FMVs were not AI upscaled and are the same quality as the original FMVs. Regardless of the mode you play and which console you play on, the game itself is always at around 900p, while the UI is at 1080p on your TV. And a side note here quick that the game visually complements the Switch in handheld mode nice, thanks to its smaller resolution. There are options to stretch the game to widescreen or to zoom into the middle, though this, of course, obstructs your view. Something else notably featured in Square's emulation here is some perspective correction. You know that warping that PS1 game 3D surfaces do? Perspective correction fixes that and is utilized in emulators like Beetle and especially DuckStation. Square's implementation gets the job done for larger surfaces like in battle, though it gets a little caught up on character models in the field. Now we have to discuss frame rates, which, depending on who you ask, is possibly not a big deal or is flat out unacceptable. I'm more of the latter, but be sure to decide for yourself and check out Digital Foundry's video analyzing the game's frame rate if you want more info. Remember that this is an emulator that's doing its best to be accurate, so the remaster is trying to target the original game's frame rates, which were already not the most stable. Unfortunately, the remaster's frame rates actually fluctuate worse than the original game and are wholly unstable. Regardless if you play on Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, or Xbox Series, you will be met with inconsistent frame rates and even input delay worse than the original game. On console, all you can do to mitigate the frame rates instability, if it bothers you that is play with the classic graphics, but even then, it's still not as stable as the original release. Also, for what it's worth, the console versions have a very slight audio delay and it's most noticeable on Switch. And then the best case scenario for the PC version in its vanilla state is the same performance we see on consoles. However, Special K has been manually tweaked and QA'd with help from the modding community and has successfully achieved frame rates more stable than the original game, with practically none of the side effects from overclocking in other emulators. At Special K's default settings, we've got 30 in the field and mostly 60 in battles, on top of mitigating hitches and reducing input delay. This is likely your best bet as Special K combines prior FPS fixes like ISA's FPS patch. Just download Skiff and update to the latest regular Discord update. You can also manually tweak values to achieve 60 in the field or change the internal resolution, but this will evoke side effects, so I don't recommend it since it is a less polished experience. But again, the options are there. In the meantime, Square customer support has let people know that they are working on updates, but they don't have any ETAs on when they will be out. The music in the remaster is as you remember it, though it was confirmed that Yosunori Mitsuda did more EQing and mastering, so the music does have a very slight different sound to it compared to the original. Meanwhile, the launcher for the game features new rearranged music, though the launcher is the only place where you'll hear the music. I am happy to report that after a few days straight of testing, that Pip's element grid growth has been fixed. You are free to quit out of the game and reload in after fully evolving Pip, and you'll still receive the correct grid upgrades beyond star level 27. However, Pip's stack growth no longer upgrades under any circumstances. It remains the same as his base form throughout his evolutions. My only leading theory on this decision was that it was done for balancing. The game doesn't really require min-maxing either, it isn't that difficult, so Pip is arguably still viable despite the effort required to evolve him, though folks have still been vocal that Square should bring back his original stack growth changes between forms, again, especially because of the effort he requires compared to everybody else in the game. You also can't get infinite money utilizing Viper anymore, so the two most well-known glitches have been fixed. The quirk with queuing attacks in battles remains though if you're actually that fast, but the roulette in the casino can't be paused in the same manner anymore. You can still pause it on PC at least using the escape key, and maybe on console you can use your home button, at least on Switch, but that's about all you get. You also used to be able to access the Hydra Marshes early in New Game Plus, but this was patch 2. And now to end the video, we'll check in on the Radical Dreamers remaster. Radical Dreamers also has differences between the chosen graphics modes. The classic style uses the original game's illustrations, but the font has some jagged look to it like the Chrono Cross's classic style does. The new style has a cleaner serif font fitting the text adventure nature, but the illustrations have this bilinear filtering look to them. If a mod is done that lets you have the clean font with the original illustrations, I'd use it immediately. There's an auto text option now, though depending on how fast of a reader you are, you might not be waiting on it to advance. There's no Satella view opening of course either, but you do get to name your character. There's no text speed options either, but the default text speed is significantly faster than it used to be anyway. And it should go without saying that the prior localization effort from Demiforce and his team was nothing short of impressive, but this is, by all means, the official localization and translation of the material. At the end of the day, there's potential deal-breaker aspects to both the original game and the remaster, especially depending on accessibility to hardware, the extra homework you want to do just to play the game, or what aspects that we looked at that stuck out to you. It is a very long game, and you will be doing multiple playthroughs if you want to experience everything and get everybody, so the version you pick is pretty important. Visuals are subjective to everyone, though the best performance between the original and remaster goes to the PC version with Special K. As of this video, the PS1 version's performance still does beat out the PS5, Xbox, and Switch versions, but if you're someone unbothered by that, then more power to you, considering there is simply no absolutely flawless version anyway. Out of the box, the remaster does have glitches fixed and added features in addition to the Radical Dreamers text adventure. On the other hand, the original will always retain its own script and totally unaltered analog visuals. So thanks to everyone among the chrono, speedrunning, and modding communities for their documentation and helpful discussion for me for material for this video. These communities are always the backbones for these videos, and the Moogles and Mods Discord was especially helpful for this one. You can find me on Twitter and Patreon, and until next time, thank you for watching.